I think to understand the greatest challenge just facing us as Christian ministers in church or in overseas ministry is we've got to understand the context that we're working in and living in. And my summary of that is that God is shaking the heavens and the earth right now. And I believe, and he's doing it to draw his people to himself. That's those who already know him and knows his name's in the book of life, but they're still on this journey to becoming followers of Christ. So God, if we can understand that God is shaking the heavens and the earth, it changes everything. In our ministry, we first began to notice this in 2010, and it became just very discernible in the Middle East and the surrounding region. But since then, these waves, call them shock waves or whatever you want to call it, has, in a spiritual sense, have been going right across the world. We can think of words like Arab Spring, rise of suffering from brutality in Syria and Iraq, refugees, great increased nationalism around the world, tribalism even, different views on rule of law, and of course, the biggest one of all that's impacted right across the globe is the COVID pandemic. Now we can look at these and how on earth do we respond to these things as a church and as ministers. In fact, we can get quite down and depressed about them and feel very vulnerable and at risk. But if God is shaking the heavens and the earth, doesn't it change at all? Psalm 46, verses 1-3, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the sea. Against this backdrop, our traditional ways of doing ministry just don't cut it anymore. Or they're only partially meeting the needs. There's new needs, there's different needs. And actually, if we can find someone who knows the answer here on earth, then, well, that's gold dust, because actually I don't believe any of us know the answer, because God is doing a new thing in these times. So we can keep working, and as a Western minister, I'm geared to this, I'm hardwired with this thought that somehow if I just work a little bit harder in the ministry, if I just do a little bit more, if we just push a bit further, that the kingdom will just advance that bit more. But that's been challenged. Psalm 127 verse 1, unless the Lord builds a house, those that labor in vain. And the biggest challenge for us as a church going forward is, are we laboring on the house that God's building? Or are we laboring on some other house? Yesterday's house, not today's house in this new season. So to me, I think that is our biggest challenge as a church, as a ministry. Your churches are facing it. How do we do church when people can't gather face to face? How do we do church when people can't hug? How do we do church when younger generations increasingly communicate online, but with people they've never met face to face? How do we build in-depth, trusting relationships in those environments? Those environments aren't wrong. We need to learn how to do it. So to me, that's our greatest challenge. Are we building the right house? I want to give one example about how we've done this as a ministry. And it's not an example that we've now got to the end and we know the answer and we can look back and say everything's worked out. It's still in progress, it's still in process, but it's a long example, if you know what I mean. And we're learning as we're doing it. We're not getting it right all the time. So here's the example. So late in year 2019, we partnered with the leaders of the church in Turkey to convene an international gathering. in Ephesus in Turkey, where leaders from 44 nations were there to meet with the church in Turkey. And it's a first generation church in Turkey, amongst the majority population. This has never happened before in all of history. So again, there's not a playbook of how you do this. This is new for that people, that culture. Anyway, the gathering went really well, a great success. God spoke to lots of people, partnerships were formed. Yes, fantastic. And there was so many people so rushing off, and everyone was saying, what are you going to do next? What are you going to put in place? We need some events next year. We need meetings. We need wider meetings around the world so we can get more people hearing and knowing about this. We need opportunities for you to bring people into Turkey, all that sort of stuff. But God, I always love those two words, but God. But God had spoken to us in our ministry about 2 months before the event. And he spoke again from Psalm 46 that I read at the beginning of before about, God being our refuge and strength. And it's an awesome psalm. It uses the picture of a river with many streams, which just happened to be the picture God had given us many months before for this gathering of people, many streams and the mixing of the waters and going out. And so, this is definitely he's speaking to us. And right at the end, near the end in verse 10, and there's not time to read it all, but it said, after all the action, God melting, he only has to really lifts his voice and the earth melts. This is how powerful this God we serve is. And we think our little bit of effort's going to make a huge difference. He only has to lift his voice and the earth melts. Put us in context. Verse 10, we all know it. Be still and know that I am God. And that word, those words just spoke deeply to us. What I understood that God was saying through that really clear understanding was, in that verse, he was really saying, not just know about him, but a deeper level of trust than ever before. Like we're in that river that it talks about. And it's like he was saying, yeah, you can push and you can try and make this happen and that happen and go against the flow, push up against that water. But are you prepared to trust? Would you just lift your feet off the bottom of the water, bring them up to your chest, trust me and come along for this ride with me? And as we sensed this, we felt we had to wait, and our Turkish brothers and sisters were saying the same thing to us, let's just wait. But it's all us foreigners, we were like, oh yes, come on, we've got to get moving. So counterintuitive, countercultural, yet it's a word of God. It takes a lot of trust in him, because this could all go badly wrong. And this incredible opportunity that built up because of over many years of planning and everything could all come to naught. 2020 came. We're still waiting. A few months in, the world changes. Suddenly we realize, okay, maybe this was the word of the Lord. Because all the plans we could have put in place, all the initiatives, all of everything, they wouldn't have happened. They just couldn't happen. And in any event, even if we had tried to do them, the church leaders in Turkey was now fully engaged with looking after their flock. People were dying. People were separated from one another. A whole new experience. And around the world, the same thing was happening in everybody's homes, church situations and their organisation. People consumed with their media. And so we just waited and we trusted. Well, we've had to adjust. We've been preparing resources so that when God says go, we're ready to go. These are resources to equip. Books we're writing. One's on prayer, one's on how best to serve in Turkey. We're working our website into different languages. We are connecting with people around the world as they're beginning to reconnect. We're advising people who are thinking to travel to Turkey for ministry. Okay, in this season, maybe that's not necessarily the best thing right now. And if so, here's some ways to do it. So we've had to change. But prayer, we've been praying and praying, Lord, show us. Because our sense is the way it's going to outwork is going to be so different to we could have imagined. Because it's really hard to imagine something you've never seen before. So now, through this time, he's worked deep in our hearts. We've become desperate. The people we serve have become more desperate. And we're just having to trust in God. I don't know, I haven't got the end story for you to say this is how it all panned out. I believe it's the Lord's hand right through. And that's how, one way we're responding. We're learning to listen to God and trust and rely in ways that we've never had to before.